Miami Mayor Francis Suarez joined the crowded 2024 race. I want you to take a listen to what he told MSNBC's Jose Diaz-Balart when he was asked if he would be willing to pardon Trump. Take a listen.
If I became president of the United States, I think the pardon power, one of the possible reasons for using the pardon power is to heal the country. So, who knows what will happen? He's innocent until proven guilty. He has not been proven guilty. But certainly, if I became president, one thing I would look at as president is using the pardon power to heal the country.
Jennifer, I think we all get sort of the political dynamics of this, right? The idea that this is a way to curry favor with Trump loyalists. But pardon power to heal the country, is that really something they can sell?
No, because, of course, if you do that, you'll have more than half the country who thinks he committed crimes up in arms. So that's really a dodge. But I have to say, both Suarez and most of the rest of the field, not all of them, but most of them, make a big mistake in refusing to take Trump on. This guy is being indicted for serious crimes. He could be under trial for serious crimes. He could be convicted of serious crimes. And they're making excuses for him and blaming the Justice Department. It makes me think they don't even really want to win. In order to beat him, you got to attack him. And you got to make clear to Republican voters that if they nominate this guy, it's going to make 2020 look like a high point in their presidential politics. They're going to lose and lose big. And I think you do have some voices coming out from Chris Christie, but also from people like Bill Barr, Trey Gowdy, other Republicans who you don't normally think of as being really all that squishy. Mike Pompeo, for example, because I think they see the handwriting on the wall. These are rational people. I don't agree with them on much of anything, but at least they're rational. And they understand you can't have such a person in the White House. So we'll see if they make any headway. But this notion that Biden has to do it and people are criticizing him for telling his staff not to say anything, that's ridiculous. Of course he shouldn't say anything. For those of us old enough to remember Richard Nixon, when he piped up about Charles Manson, he almost created a mistrial. The President of the United States should not be commenting on any criminal prosecution. He should stay away from it. And everybody in the White House should stay away from it. It's not like the American people don't know that Donald Trump is going to be on trial for serious crimes.
Right. And Mo, let me just sort of flesh out what Jen is alluding to there. NBC reports, quote, some Democrats insist the party needs to mount a full-throated defense of the law enforcement agencies that charge Trump with mishandling sensitive national security records. They also want to paint the indictment as a fresh example of the chaos another Trump presidential term would bring. I just don't know in this environment, Mo, how the president is supposed to do that without stepping into Republicans' false frames that this is all politicization of the DOJ.
No, that's exactly right. The second he opens his mouth, he validates all of their arguments that this is a politically motivated trial, that this is the president of the United States prosecuting his leading political opponent, which is ridiculous. There's no reason for him to feed into that. Jennifer is right. People know it and they see it. And there's plenty of other people out there drawing that distinction. Now, the second part of that quote, though, I do think there is room to play with. I believe 2020 was an election, was a referendum on chaos, the chaos of the Trump years, people just saying we've had enough of this. There are a lot of people who can go out there and say, if you thought the chaos from 2017 to 2021 was bad, this campaign is just getting started and look where we're at. Anyone who has forgotten what that feeling of chaos was like is getting a daily reminder. And I do think there are some Democrats that can lean into that a little bit more. Doesn't need to be the White House.